Prosecutors have announced criminal charges in the Rust movie set shooting. Alec Baldwin will be charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter in the death of Helena Hutchins. This all happened on the film set in New Mexico in October of 2021. The film's armorer is also facing involuntary manslaughter charges.
Yeah, there is a lot to unpack here, so we want to bring in Whitney Traylor, our 9 News legal analyst. Thank you for coming in.
Sure, good morning.
This was huge news yesterday. So we know criminal charges have been announced, but not yet filed. So what is the timeline from here?
Well, the DA has said they're going to file by the end of January. So if they do, then the timeline starts, and then you're in for a quick. You have to get to trial quickly as a criminal defendant. So we're expecting charges, and they're saying that it's going to be involuntary manslaughter, and there's 2 kind of types, and it basically what that involves is he was engaged in a lawful act. He actually, what they were doing was lawful, but it was negligent in the way that they carried it out. And this thing just does not make sense to me because they've charged the armorer, and then the assistant director already took a plea for a slighter offense and will do essentially 5 months on a deferred sentence, so he may not actually do any time. So it's the armorer and Alec Baldwin. But the question is, how do you have live rounds on the set? I mean, they had dummy rounds, they had blanks, and then apparently they had live rounds and that just doesn't make sense. So that negligence charge, that does make sense.
So what's interesting is there's already been a settlement on potential civil claims here. How does that play into all of this as well?
Right. So under the rules of evidence, the civil settlement will not come into court. So, and that's not unusual because remember, a lot of actions can be both a civil violation and a criminal act. So here they're being charged criminally with involuntary manslaughter, but civilly the family could have sued for wrongful death. And so what they did was they, I'm sure, wrote a letter and they started negotiations. And so as part of the negotiations, we don't know what the settlement was, but I'm sure there was some money aspect. The husband is also getting credit as an executive producer, and I'm sure there's other things, royalties and things from the film. So that means that the civil claims there's nothing there to go forward. The family's done. So now it's just these criminal charges.
And since this all happened, Alec Baldwin has made lots of appearances. He's done lots of interviews. Can he be implicated on any of that now?
As his lawyer, I'm sure his lawyers were advising, don't do those interviews. Yes, exactly. And so he came out soon after and did the George Stephanopoulos interview, and then he talked to Fox a couple times. And he made some weird, he said, for example, that he never pulled the trigger. And there's the FBI and other gun forensics saying that the gun could not have gone off without the trigger being pulled. And then later they recanted it. So he said a number of things. Those things could certainly come back to hurt him because he could be impeached with that for lying, coming out and lying. And that's not unusual, though, to do spin control and for them to him to want to get out ahead of it. But he listened to the marketing folks and not the legal team.
Right. Yeah, that's certainly an oops on their part across the board. So obviously this is not the first time that there is something like this has happened on a movie set. Not necessarily ending in death, but there are like serious injuries with like stunt doubles and all sorts of stuff like that. I mean, I feel like this is going to be a yes, but changes are going to have to be made on sets with things like this. This should have never happened. Right.
This should have never happened. And this, I mean, the theory, so I think the defense that they're going to have, and I'll get to the question, but they're going to say, because there's a reasonable doubt, they're going to say, how did these rounds get in here? And there were 7, this is not really publicized, but there were 7 or 8 production folks that were upset and quit right before the start of the movie. So as their defense lawyer, they could say, hey, this is our defense. This creates the reasonable doubt that that somebody sabotaged and put this in here. But the point is they didn't have proper protocols. If they had proper protocols, this would have never happened, even if somebody tried to sabotage it. And so that's what you're going to see. So there was already an OSHA violation, and they got charged, I think, $140,000. They're appealing that. So the lots of folks are saying we need now more regulation in the movie industry because this has happened in a number of different cases. And I've said this many times before in a broader context. Everybody says, no more government regulation, get out of our lives. But then somebody goes and shoots somebody on a set, and it's like, okay, well, now we have to put controls in place because you guys can't handle this, essentially.
I have a feeling we're going to be talking a lot more about this in the future. Whitney, thank you for coming in.
Sure thing. Good to be here.